Hi, I'm David with EV World News. We talk about electric vehicles, green energy, and the stock markets. I'm here today with our founder and chief editor, Bill Moore. How's it going today, Bill?
Hey, it's going well. Thank you very much.
So today we were supposed to actually have a guest from Oasis Amps,
Yeah.
Bobby Primus, and because of the hurricane, he's from Sarasota, Florida, and
Oh man, dead center.
yeah, dead center where it made
Wow.
landfall. So I haven't
Yeah.
heard from Bobby yet. Bobby, if you're watching, please let us know you're okay.
Yeah.
But I think he actually evacuated. So, anyways, yeah, that was pretty tragic. I've checked in with some other people that I know in the Tampa area, and they basically got missed. It went ashore, I think, 60 miles south of Tampa or something like
Yeah.
that. That's a
Yeah.
pretty big difference for them, but it hit like Sarasota, Bradenton, some other
Yeah.
areas like that. Just
Yeah.
kind of tragic.
I watched coverage. Wow, for hours of it until it actually made the landfall. And there's a guy that has multiple storm chasers out, and
Right.
he's feeding all that into multiple cameras. And there are a couple of cameras where you know at the start of the storm surge, and then in the midst of it, there's a big pipe out there, and the pipe was now getting covered, and there was a fence going to a little pavilion, and it kept getting higher and higher, and that was covering the fence. And
Yeah.
I think he wasn't quite sure that the pavilion would last, and I'm guessing that it did because that fence didn't go anywhere. I mean, it was being hammered, but it wasn't going any particular, being hauled off. I was kind of anxious to see. He was battling some throat problems, and so I don't know whether he was able to complete the show or not. But hopefully, he'll pick it up, and we'll learn the fate of the storm shed or the pavilion out there on the
Right.
beach out by Sarasota.
Well, I keep seeing these pictures of like alligators in people's houses and in their garages. They're trying to get out of the car, and the alligators attacking the car,
Yeah,
and the alligators are all confused because they've been washed, you know,
yeah,
somewhere weird,
yeah.
Yeah, and to be fair, you don't need to bring your alligators inside because they can hold their breath for like 6 hours or whatever. They're not in any
Wow,
real
yeah,
danger in the storm, so don't worry. It's not like me bringing in my coyotes in the wintertime when I think it's too cold.
yeah. And they can walk back to the swamp when they need to. So
Well, if they can find it,
yeah.
but it's these weird things where the water rises and all of a sudden everything is,
Well,
kind of open
yeah,
for business.
yeah. I was just watching a little bit of video on MSNBC today, and they were showing this intersection where they've got this giant tired contraption that's an amphib of some type, and they've been rescuing elderly people from a assisted living care center, which is underwater. So it's yeah. I hopefully everybody's okay. I have some friends down there as well in the Tampa area. Have not heard from them, but we've not communicated for quite a long time, so I'm not even sure the email still works. But
I communicated with some people in Pasco County, and they didn't even lose power. But I was checking some statistics, and 52% of people in Pasco County, which is just north of Tampa, it's the next county north.
right,
52% of people are without power, but they're in the northern part of Pasco County, and I suspect the people in the southern part of Pasco County are probably the ones that
yeah. What do we got?
lost power.
About 3 million people without power and
Yes,
water.
I saw that where it ripped the roof off of this stadium. You
Yeah,
know,
the baseball park. Yeah,
yeah. Anyways, so Hurricane Milton's not the only news today. The other big
no,
news today is Tesla's robotaxi event.
yeah,
So they're supposed to be doing some kind of unveiling today, and it's October 10th, so today's the day, and they're supposed to announce it. But there's going to be a lot of questions because FSD isn't truly fully autonomous yet.
yeah.
What's really going on, where that's going to play out, how's that going to affect, things like Uber, for instance. So you got companies like Uber that are going to be affected by,
Yeah, Lyft.
whether or not,
Yeah.
yeah, and Lyft and things like that. And so it'll be interesting
Well,
kind of to see where
there's
that
such a
goes.
yeah, such a divergence of opinions on this. You got, people that are saying, man, this is going to drive them to a $4 trillion company. And then you have others that say, no, they're not even close. It's Waymo's ahead of them. And I saw one article that says, the Chinese guys are way ahead of them. So, it'll be interesting to see will he actually roll out, the vehicle, or will it just be some kind of a hype event? And, I don't know. I guess we'll see. It's I think Burbank Studios in Hollywood that they're going to be doing this.
So, one of the things is Tesla is a lot like Apple. They release something, people get excited about it. Okay.
Right.
Everybody else can release the same damn thing and people just aren't that excited about it.
Right.
But if Tesla's releasing it or Apple's releasing it, and I have an Apple iPhone 11. Okay. And you get all those offers to upgrade my phone. They just released the damn 16, and I keep looking. It's like, this doesn't do anything my current phone doesn't do. It's just the picture might be a little better.
Well, does it video in slow-mo?
I don't know.
See, now they got the new camera has the ability to do rapid multiple frames per second. So then you can use it to do slow motion photography or slow motion video. So, but that was the only thing I thought, well, okay, that's kind of cool, but I don't know if I'd, trade in my old one for, and I don't even have, let's see here, right here, right? That's an i6 or whatever that is.
Damn.
That's my daughter's. I don't even use that one. I'm a Android guy.
So I also have an Android phone. Okay, and I like the Android interface better generally.
Yeah.
Than the Apple interface. There's very few advantages to the Apple. The main one is that if you're communicating with other Apple people, there seems to be some advantage in group conversations.
Okay.
And it interfaces a little better with WhatsApp. And there's a couple of things that it interfaces better with, but it's interesting. For the most part, I like Android features better. Android has a better keyboard. Of course, this isn't the Android show. This isn't the mobile phone show. But we're to Tesla and Uber and all that. And it's interesting because today, Tesla and Uber, their stocks are both down just a hair. Less than 1/10%. I mean, it's very slight price down, but it just, the autonomous vehicles are going to become a thing, because you see Waymo and folks like that in Phoenix that seem to be doing well with it. Tesla's not doing as much with it, but Tesla's talking about not just having their robo-taxi, which the robo-taxi we're thinking is going to also maybe eventually be a Model 2. So I'm wondering if there's going to be, because we were hearing there was going to be a smaller Tesla than the Model 3, and that kind of got pushed back. People are saying it's been discontinued, or is it actually what the robo-taxi is? Yeah. It's going to be interesting to see what kind of announcement comes out today. But there's a number
do you recall what time it is? Generally, they do these things in the evening, like around 7:00.
Yeah, I don't actually have the time on the announcement, which is kind of weird. I've looked at several news articles about it, but none of them have announced the time.
I haven't either.
For it. So that, I thought that was kind of odd that, but anyways, today is considered to be Robo-Taxi Day. But one of the funny thing is people think it'll increase the value of Uber because it's one of those things like the whole, you have a McDonald's, you put a Burger King across the street, and all of a sudden both places
now you're attracting
have business because it's attracting to the corner, right? And they're thinking that this is going to attract more people to ride share, things like that. But it's going to put downward pressure on prices for ride share. Now, Elon's saying he's going to get it to the price where it's equivalent to riding the bus.
Right.
I just have a hard time seeing that. I mean, right now with Waymo is spending $300,000 on every car. Okay. So, you've got an issue in that you could be out driving Uber with a McLaren, and, hauling people around, for that kind of money for the car. So that's a lot of money on a vehicle to depreciate. Even if you drove that vehicle 1 million miles over 10 years and, you're depreciating it, you still that's a lot of depreciation every year, and you're eventually, let's say you're going through a couple of batteries every few years. I'm just saying that it's a lot of vehicle. I mean, that's 40, 50,000 in vehicle expense besides electricity, which isn't going to be super expensive, but you know what I'm saying?
Right.
It's not really doing a lot for not, well, in the case of Waymo, they're not completely autonomous. So those are really more of a drone. I mean, because they actually have a call center or whatever, a driving center where people are actually driving the cars remotely. So that the cars are partly autonomous and partly a human is there ready to take over.
Ready to intervene, yeah.
Yeah, but they're supposedly autonomous. It's just the driver is not in the seat, and they're trying to do it by camera. The problem is that still relies on connectivity, right?
Yeah.
So, if you're dealing with a drone that's flying over Iraq and it's being piloted by somebody in Grand Forks, North Dakota, that is going through satellite connections, I assume. It's not like going over a cell phone network, trying to make the drone fly. It's like, we're flying the drone. Oh, we lost cell phone signal.
Yeah.
It's like, where'd the drone go? Oh, flew into Iran. Yeah. And I'm just saying it. So they obviously are using satellites, but when it comes to cars, we know the GPS system is pretty accurate as to where a car is, but it's not always accurate. Sometimes GPS will lag behind different things. So I'm sure GPS uses a mix of satellite signals mixed with, what's going on in the cell network.
Yeah, I know. I have a small, a drone that I fly occasionally for recreation, and it's interesting to see, when you turn it on, you won't immediately take off because it has to find those satellites, and so typically it'll find 4 or 5 satellites before it says, okay, now you can take off. So there's not just one. There's a constellation up there that even my little recreational drone depends on. Oh, speaking of remote autonomous vehicles, they've launched a ferry service down in Norway that it did have, when it started, it had a pilot that would take the ferry back and forth across the river. Well, now they're controlling that remotely. I think it's like 350 kilometers away, up in Trondheim, where they have the university.
Yeah.
So they're controlling this electrically powered ferry boat that carries about 25 people back and forth across the river, and the guy piloting it, basically supervising, is standing in front of a replica of the controls that are in the ferry. And then he can sit there and, if he needs to, and he has kind of a multiple number of screens that'll kind of give him the same view he would see if he were standing, physically in the ferry. So that's like you can see he could probably be doing several ferries at the same time, because it's not, and there may be the occasional ship traffic or some other, modern boat traffic he has to deal with. But other than that, he could probably be doing several. So what does that do to the ferry captain job market, right? Interesting.
Yeah. Well, so it still has a pilot. It's just he's not in the same.
He's just
in
not
the same
in the cabin.
place.
Right.
Right. All
Which
right.
I don't know. If I'm on that ferry, I might be a little nervous.
All right.
Hey,
Let's move.
Where's the captain?
Right. No, I get it. Let's talk about the Rivian truck after Hurricane Helene. So this guy has a $70,000 Rivian electric truck. He thought it was totaled, and then he turned it on, and nothing had happened.
Right.
And it was just caked in mud, right?
In mud. About that, it looked like it's about that thick of.
And it had been swept 100 yards away. Now, it's probably maybe 1,000 pounds heavier or 500 pounds heavier than a normal pickup truck because of the batteries, and but it got washed 100 yards away, covered in mud, and it started fine. Now, you were saying earlier, might not be a good idea to park it in his garage for a while.
Yeah, I'd be a little hesitant.
Yeah, but you know what? He didn't have salt water. He just had regular water.
Yeah, it was just fresh water. Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, so
Well,
we're going to talk about that a little bit.
muddied water. So yeah.
Yeah, muddied water. But yeah, this guy Michael Cusick has a viral flooded R1T video. And let me see. I'm not going to show the video, but the pictures are
Pretty
pretty
astounding.
entertaining.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So there's what his R1T looks like in these pictures. It's like, oh, here's one where he's got the mud off. He's got another one behind him, which is interesting. But yeah, it's completely caked there. So, um, oh, here's got it charging in this picture. He's
Well, might
nicely
as well.
dressed. He's
Yeah.
nicely dressed for having a muddy truck. That's kind of funny. But yeah, that's quite entertaining. No water got inside the vehicle. It's but the
Because
mud
it was
was so thick
coated
it
with
sealed
mud.
the
Yeah.
vehicle from water
Yeah.
intrusion.
Yeah.
But they're designed to be able to seal up. Now, I just thought this was kind of interesting to see because one of the things we were talking about is people needed to. Tesla was telling people to have their vehicles charged. So Tesla is moving mobile superchargers
Right.
into Florida,
Yep.
and they're going to show up on the Tesla app and in the car and all that where they're at if people need to get to a charger. And they're using these big 4+ megawatt hour battery packs that they're bringing in so that they can charge cars. And I don't know, that I guess that would fully
Did
charge
you?
about 50 cars.
Yeah. What did you see any indication of how they'll, will they just deplete that giant battery pack down, then go off back to Georgia or back to someplace where they can recharge it? I mean, how are they planning on keeping
Yeah, I don't
those?
know where they go about recharging that big battery. I
Yeah.
mean, that's a big power draw. Maybe they'll just drive it somewhere where there's other Tesla superchargers, and maybe they are able to plug into several at once.
Yeah, if any of the listeners that we've got on right now, if you happen to have an answer for that, maybe put it down in the comments.
Yeah,
We'd love to know what their plans are for that. We get I have to deal with so much news that's coming through, literally hundreds of stories, and anymore I'm just scratching the surface, it seems. And I just don't have time to. I see the headlines, I scan the story, I post it to our RSS stream, and don't have. And this is one of those ones where, yeah, I'd like to know what are they, how are they planning on keeping those batteries charged?
right. Yeah, well, I mean, you could fully charge at least 50 Tesla long ranges from 0 to 100, but you figure they're probably not going to charge more than 50% on most vehicles. So,
Yeah,
that'd be 100 cars they could service. And by the time they've serviced 100 cars, who knows? I mean, it's supposed to be a whole bunch of them. So it wasn't like they were just bringing one, but that was essentially one tractor trailer has that size of a battery pack on it. Mike and I were talking about this because when you do battery storage, that's about how big a 140-foot shipping container of power of batteries is
mm,
about is a little
okay.
more than
Yeah,
4 megawatt hours.
yeah,
Yeah. So, anyways, so who knows? Like I said, I could envision them going somewhere where there was power and going to a bank of Tesla superchargers that weren't being utilized, and take power draw there where
right.
where somewhere still had power available.
Yeah, well,
So
well, we were talking about this before going live, and that I know I was watching the coverage last night, and they had storm chasers who were out driving around Sarasota and in Tampa and those areas, and the street lights were still on. They said, "Well, we've got 3 million people without power now, but all the places where many of the downtown areas where the storm chasers were driving, hotels did have, there was one hotel the guy was at, there was, I don't know, there's probably 5 feet of water around that hotel, yet all the lights on the hotel were still on, right? and the
Hmm.
street lights are on, and business district were still operating. So there obviously were places where the power system, the grid was infrastructure was strong enough that it didn't have to depend on wind blowing into power lines and knocking transformers out and things like that. And I guess that would that's probably where those areas that they were going to. And it would, it probably had people who were coordinating with the local power companies down there. God, what is it? Florida Power and Light, I think, does most of the powers around in the Florida area. And Florida Power and Light had a long history of participation and support of electric vehicle technology. Going back, God, going back 25 years. I've been to
Oh, wow.
events. Yeah, I've been to events where one of the main event sponsors was Florida Power and Light. So they've had a strong background in that. So I would imagine there's communication. They say, look, we got power here. You can go there and recharge, and it might be 25, 30 miles away, but they can do it.
Yeah. Let's see. Now, one of the things I wanted to talk about was flooded electric cars going up in flames. So there is electric cars don't necessarily catch on fire just from going into water, but salt water is a different story. If salt water is able to seep into the batteries, it can cause a fire. Now, these statistics were after Hurricane Helene. Okay, so Milton's going to have some similar, Milton's probably may or may not be more serious. I mean, what Helene did up in the Carolinas is catastrophic, or was catastrophic, still is. I mean, they're still recovering there and will be for a while. But what's going on in Florida, it hit heavily populated areas. So there's massive damage, millions of people without power. That's one of the things too. If this hurricane had come through 50 years ago, those areas weren't nearly as populated. So the damage isn't as much. And that's one of the things is our coastal areas, more people retiring and building down on the coast. You're just going to have more damage because there's more people.
Exactly.
But I was telling Bill about some of this earlier. So far, in the state, this is for the state of Florida. There's over 50,000 EV and hybrid registrations in the state of that are registered in the path of Hurricane Milton. Now, since the lithium battery fires, there was 64 reported lithium battery fires after Hurricane Helene. Now, this is 64 lithium battery fires. Okay. Of those, 17 were electric, basically like electric cars. Okay, it could have been electric cars, electric trucks, but the rest were devices like scooters, hoverboards, and golf carts. One was an electric wheelchair. Yeah. So we're just saying that out of that 64, 17, which makes it about 27%, were actually electric cars.
Yeah.
One fire did cause a house to be damaged.
Yeah.
Or burned down. One home in the Davis Islands was thought to have burned down after Helene because of an electric vehicle fire.
Yeah, was that the one where we got the security camera video where it goes up in flames in the garage?
It must be. It must be. I've seen that. Yeah. What's interesting though, just because the car got wet doesn't mean that it can catch on fire. It had to have been salt water. So you had to have been in the storm surge area. So if it was flooding in, fresh water, not the same thing.
Yeah, I wonder what there is about. Obviously, it's heavily mineralized water. What's the difference? Why is salt water has so much more of a penetration capability?
Well, it conducts electricity. It conducts electricity in a way that fresh water does not.
Yeah,
especially if it gets inside a sealed lithium-ion battery, which doesn't make any sense. It causes a short circuit, which creates heat and potentially fire. It's akin to accidentally touching both terminals of a car battery with a wrench. Sparks will fly.
Yeah.
Well, let's see. Oh, and I'll show people what they really want to see. That's, of course, this is after it's been put out. But here is a Tesla that got burned. Now, one of the things is I was telling Bill, I'd be really curious to know a breakdown. So Teslas are over half of all electric cars in the United States. They're definitely the big dog in EV sales in the U.S. But I'd love to know what that breakdown was, and like what model year these were. Were these 2020 and newer? Were these like 2014? Now this is this looks like a Model 3 to me. It could it's either a 3 or a Y, but I think that's a 3. But I'm just saying that it be real curious to see what the breakdown is, because if it was like old Chevy Bolts or Nissan Leafs or something like that were more prone to fires from 10 years ago, because you're still. What's funny is old EVs don't really get scrapped the same way that gas cars do, because the EVs have a longer useful life. So what happens is you've got a lot of old, what is it? Nissan sold 1 million Leafs since what? This came out in like 2010. They've been out for 14 years, so if a lot of those could have been, older cars, whatever. So we don't really know. It'd be really interesting I hope that at some point we get some statistics of how that actually broke down and which brands were good. I mean, we saw that, how the Rivian, now that Rivian though wasn't exposed to salt water. It was exposed to fresh water. And we're assuming, we don't know if water got to the battery or not, because it wasn't salt. It wouldn't cause it to have the same kind of chemical reaction.
Could it, because all of these cars also have 12-volt batteries in them. And it could be the electronics, and there was a spark or something that started, something heated up some wires up under the dash, right, and set that plastic wiring and other things on fire, and of course spreads from there. So it might not necessarily have been the battery pack itself that caused this. And of course, once the car starts to burn and things start to melt, then that may have set the pack itself on fire. So so hopefully the Department of Transportation, Secretary Buttigieg, if you're listening, would be interesting if you can get your guys to
give some statistics,
do an analysis of this, and let us all know.
Yeah, that would be really interesting to know. So you saw somewhere that EV fires or electric vehicle fires made up 1/4 of the cars that caught fire during the last hurricane.
During Helene. Yeah, and I don't remember where it was. But
yeah,
basically it was like there was like I think the number was like there were 11 electric vehicle fires and that represented 25%, which is close to this 27% number you were talking about.
Well, but this was of a battery fires. This was of battery fires, not of car fires.
Right.
Yeah. So, kind of interestingly, the first EV fire with a hurricane was 2012 with Hurricane Sandy. There was one.
Yeah.
And Hurricane Ian in 2022, there was about 5,000 EVs impacted by the storm. 600 were totaled out.
Yeah.
And 36 caught on fire in that one. So, but once again, those were older ones. So I'm kind of curious because battery technology keeps changing. We're starting to see more of the lithium ferrous phosphate batteries that don't catch on fire as easily. It makes me really curious about the battery chemistry and of the vehicles that.
Well, there's all kinds of groups out there, both private and government funded, that could tackle this and do the research. And I'm assuming they probably will. And 6 months from now, we'll hear about it.
Oh, here's a nice comment. EV cars are bombs on wheels. Yes, they are. I mean, that's why people like them so much. I mean, they are the bomb.
Right.
Yeah.
Of course, Sisti, there are how many more? I mean, it's like a factor of 10 or something like that, more gasoline fires in the world than there are.
Well, per mile, it's 60x in the United States. In the United States, according to insurance, EV or gas cars or EVs have to be driven 60 times as much to have the same kind of fires.
Yeah.
Anyways, but Tesla is saying on its website, if the car does become submerged, to keep it at least 50 feet from structures until a mechanic has had a chance to take a look at it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So with some water damaged EVs, a mechanic can take out the battery and dry it out. And a South Florida professor is working on developing a battery that would prevent post-hurricane fires. Well, as they keep changing battery chemistries, I think this is gonna,
Yeah.
we're gonna keep
Well,
seeing that
because
change.
here, within the next 5 years or so, we're going to have solid state batteries, and that replaces that volatile electrolyte that's in the current battery technology. And fires from the battery short circuiting is going to be much, much less. Again, they all have 12 volts, they all have wiring and stuff that can, short circuit and heat up and set combustibles next to it on fire, which is typically what happens. I mean, what do we got to recall? The numbers of recalls in electric cars are insignificant compared to the numbers of recalls that happen with gasoline vehicles. When a car company has to recall, it's normally something like 150,000 of this model, or 2.5 million of these.
Right.
And so it's a problem, and the engineers are addressing it. And as we get further along with towards the solid state batteries, we're going to have that'll be less and less of an issue.
No, there's no question. Let's see here. So electric vehicle batteries are sealed and designed to keep the water out, but the seals deteriorate over time, and salt water is corrosive. In rare cases, salt water flooding can trigger a chain reaction of circuits called a thermal runaway, sweeping through the internal cells in the battery. That's why I like saying it's like it'd be really interesting to see how old, some of those cars were, and perhaps one thing too, in Florida. So a lot of times when people live in the South, they don't want to get a used car that was driven in the North, where the roads are salted, right? Because then you have the chance of having the car rust out.
Exactly.
Because where we live in Omaha, you see pickup trucks in particular driving around with big rust patches on them.
Yeah.
Because you'll drive.
Minivans and pickup trucks, and typically, I hate to say this, Dodges.
Dodges.
They have a horrible rust rate on those vehicles.
Right. I'm just saying we see tons of that here because of the nature of how they treat the roads.
Yeah.
And that's also probably the reason why everybody seems to have a membership at one of the car wash facilities. And they're huge here. I mean, it's amazing how many of these car washes with their monthly subscriptions there are around all of Omaha. I mean, they're everywhere. I would bet there's 30 of them.
Yeah, we got 2 new ones just over here. I could almost throw a stone and hit one of them. Not quite. It's about a mile away. But then just a mile beyond that, there's yet another one, brand new one. So, and I bought my car. My particular EV came out of Southern California, where I guess if you're going to want a car you bought used, you probably want one out of Southern California because the air is dry, it's desert. You don't get hurricanes occasionally.
Oh, yeah. Hey, Bill, here's an update on the National Transportation Safety Board stats for vehicle fires. So currently, for every 100,000 electric vehicles sold, there's 25 fires. Okay. And for every 100,000 gas-powered cars, there's 1,530 fires. Okay, 1,530 versus 25 for the same number of cars sold.
Yeah.
Okay. It's just that this hurricane's a unique situation that has issues with, the salt water has issues with the EVs.
Well, like the video I was watching today, right? There's this flooded intersection there in the Tampa area, apparently out near the university. There are all kinds of cars out there flooded up to their door panels or near the roof in some cases. That are those. It's obvious from the look of the car. It's a gas-powered car. That's total. It's just total. Even if there was no fire caused, that vehicle's history.
Right. All right. Let's move on. So I want to talk a little bit. So Ford is giving away when you're buying a car, they're giving away chargers. Now, one of the things that can be a bidirectional charger, which is ideal. And if you don't know how bidirectional works, it's basically saying that in an emergency situation like this, your car could be used to power the house. So if you have a bidirectional charger, when the lights go out, it'll just your house will start taking power from the vehicle. Your car can basically run the house for about 3 full days without power.
In fact, the article that I posted today that tells the story of what Ford is doing said that this guy ran his house and 3 of his neighbors' houses.
Wow.
Providing with electricity for apparently long enough before the power company got the power, to come back on. So yeah, that's if you want a vehicle and you live in an area like Florida, you may want to consider, in the future that vehicle has that ability to move power back and forth, because you can keep your lights, your refrigerator running, right? And I think the guy said he was even keeping his air conditioner running, which is surprising.
It said we power ours and 3 of our neighbors' houses, fridges, freezers, device charging stations, and CPAP machines.
Yeah.
We had that case in Australia where they had the power outages and the lady was it dialysis?
Yeah, it was her dialysis machine. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it was, it was something that was life threatening, without power. And,
then we got another case of there was a doctor that they had power out and he had to perform some type of a surgical operation. And he basically plugged, he ran a power cord from his car, his EV, into the office to do the procedure. So that's these are rolling power stations, folks. We don't think about it that way.
Now it's also possible as time goes on and you're in the right states where you can get cheap power at night. And then power is more expensive during the day. Yeah. If your vehicle's sitting there, you can arbitrage on the power cost and sell power back for more than what you paid for it at night to the power company.
Yeah, time of use metering.
Yeah, and this is going to become a bigger and bigger issue as more and more EVs get added to the grid and they're able to power the grid when there's shortages of power, there's high demand from air conditioning, things like that. People always talk about there's not enough power in the grid to power the EVs, and it's actually the other way around. The EVs are going to be the solution to the problem with power on the grid because there's plenty of energy being added. All right, so we're all about electric vehicles here, right, Bill? So occasionally we occasionally talk about boats. We sometimes talk about trains. I need to do an update on the Brightline Railroad. I may do that. We might do that next week. Okay. But today we're going to talk about the world's first 4-ton battery electric planes. And I'm assuming it's a 4-ton battery, not a 4-ton plane, because planes are heavy to start with.
Yeah, it's a battery. Yeah.
Yeah. To fly in the United States, 505-mile range on a 30-minute charge. Now that's a big charger. I assume this is one of those 800-volt chargers, or maybe it's even more extreme than that. Eviation aircraft. That's a good name. Eviation.
Based there in the northern Seattle area, in Arlington, Virginia, Arlington, Washington, which is north of Everett. Yeah.
So, anyways,
I interviewed. The company was originally based in Israel. The airplane looked pretty much different. It had a butterfly tail, and the engines were mounted out on the wingtips. And then once it got moved here to the United States, and they set up operations up in Arlington, which of course puts them within spitting distance of Boeing and Everett.
This is an interesting design with the turboprop. Well, I don't know if it's turboprop, but with the propellers at the back.
No. Yeah, those are electric motors. So this airplane's gone through some evolution. They're doing their flight tests over in Moses Lake, which means they have to. I don't know if they've done it yet, but they've flown around Moses Lake and they've had their first flights and test flights and things. I don't know whether or not they've actually flown it from Moses Lake back over to Everett. Well, not Everett, but to Arlington. Arlington formerly there's a nice, really big airfield there down in the plateau area of Arlington that used to be a naval air station. That's where they train naval pilots to fly out of carriers and things like that. So there's a nice airport facility there for doing this. And of course, just a hop, skip, and a jump down to Everett, where you've got all kinds of facilities that are attached and working with, and suppliers to Boeing. And then, of course, they do the assembly of Boeing aircraft there. And so that's a great area. If you're doing advanced technical aircraft development, that's where you want to be. So I could see why they moved it from Israel over there. But yeah, that's an exciting airplane. It's small. Not about, I think it's about 9 passengers, something like that. 500 miles range. That's not shabby. It'd be
this looks like it's.
Go ahead.
I was going to say, this looks like it's probably 2 pilots, 10 passengers. Is what it looks like. It probably is. Yeah. This is called the Alice. Now, a South Florida company that's trying to do end-to-end zero-emission transportation is called Urban Link. And so they've placed an order for 10 of these. And apparently, Aviation has orders for $5 billion worth of these aircraft. Now, my question that comes in here is, like, we just had the guy has $1 billion of orders over 20 years for motorcycles. Is can they deliver? Like in my case of the motorcycle guy, I know he can do that. I know he has the financial wherewithal to make that happen. Okay. And so his company can make that happen. Does Aviation have the capability to deliver on $5 billion worth of manufacturing? So we see this in the car space. We look at how big, some of these companies like Aptera, we keep waiting for Aptera to start delivering cars, or whatever you call their vehicles. But
yes,
that's my question here.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, like I said, you've got this, they're right in the heart of Boeing country, they're, I've been up there, I've driven it. The last time I was out there this summer, I drove right past the Boeing aircraft facility. And of course, as you may be aware, Boeing is some of their workers are on strike. So there may be some excess capacity there. You got the workers, you got the trained people to do this. Financially, I know they've
that's the question.
Yeah, they've changed the CTO, or the CEO has changed. So I don't, I guess we'll have to see. Do they have
here's a little bit of stats on the Alice aircraft. It's 57 feet long. Of course, it has 8,000 pounds of battery, and
4,000 pounds of battery.
No, it's 8,000 pounds. It's 4 tons. 4 tons, 8,000 pounds.
Oh, I see. Okay, I see. Yes, you're right.
Yeah. And it is only 9 passengers. 9 passengers, 2 pilots. But the fact that it can charge in 30 minutes is pretty incredible.
Yeah.
It has a range of 440 nautical miles, which is about 550 miles.
Yeah.
Has a max cruising speed of 250 knots, which is about 287 miles per hour, which is about half the speed of a Boeing 737.
Right.
Let's see. Eventually, they hope to be able to make a version that can haul anywhere from 20 to 40 passengers, which is kind of a typical commuter aircraft.
Yeah.
I don't like commuter aircraft. They tend to be too small for somebody of my size.
Your size, yeah.
Yes, but unless it's like less than a 60-minute flight, I don't mind those kind of aircraft if we don't have to sit on the plane for long. I've flown on small aircraft where it's like, hey, we're about to take off, everybody jump on the plane, kind of thing. Otherwise, you just waited in the lounge, and there was, like a 10-seater aircraft like this. But those actually had pretty good space. They had more space than regular airlines. But anyways, let's see.
I see this, that if Urban Link probably is looking at passenger service, there is some images out there of this aircraft being in DHL colors. So this aircraft, is really ideally suited for doing kind of package movement. So typically you can be here in, where I live, on the flight path of a lot of these aircraft. Early in the morning or late in the evening, you've got these aircraft from FedEx or DHL or whoever the package service is that's coming in, and they're flying to Epley, which is our main airport, to deliver packages to the FedEx center or wherever, to get distributed from there. So this would be ideal for that, because you're talking maybe 100, 200 miles, 300 miles at most flight range. And it'll come in here, it'll drop the packages off. It can sit overnight, be recharged. Packages come in the next day for distribution out into North Platte or Hastings or Grand Island. And it's ideal for that. And fuel costs, particularly here in Nebraska, we're at 12 cents a kilowatt hour or something like that.
Right.
Cheapest in the country. This would be perfect for a DHL type, FedEx, those kinds of, even Amazon, I guess, for those types of operations.
Yeah, Andre Stein is the current CEO of Eviation.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see.
Yeah, I've reached.
And he's been there since last year. He's only been there 11 months.
Right. Yeah, because they changed recently. So I mean, I've reached out to them because like I said, I go out there twice a year, and I keep wanting to get together with them and do a tour, but we just never seem to be able to connect. So hey, guys, if you're listening, I'm coming out there next month for Thanksgiving. Let's set up a time.
There we go. Well, we didn't put anything about Eviation in any of the titles, so we don't have. We'll see. It's not. We're not set for that. Anyways, Bill, let's talk about. I like to call our show "We're Hydrogen Neutral." Okay, we're sort of like, it seems like a good idea, but can anything ever happen? Kind of thing. And it's one of those things.
Keeps running into this wall called mathematics.
So, what's our tourism slogan here in Nebraska?
Our tourism?
What's the tourism slogan for Nebraska? Honestly, that starts with honestly.
Honestly, it's not for everybody.
Right. That's appropriate for hydrogen too, right?
Hey, the irony is that when I worked in the airline industry, and I've got almost a decade in the business, when I worked in the industry, I would often tell passengers that Nebraska is not for everyone.
Right. Yeah.
Apparently I don't know. Somebody else had a similar thought, great mind.
I think it was around 2018 they picked that up as the tourist slogan. I mean, because there is nothing really. I mean, there's some flat golf courses. There's,
it's still an interesting state. So maybe some of the more interesting stuff is further out west in the Sandhills. I'll grant you, right? Not necessarily. I mean, we got a great zoo system here, world class. And they're working on trying to build up things to interest. They've all remodeled all the downtown area along the river and things. So yeah, they're doing that. From my perspective, the really interesting stuff is further out west. But
what is it? Our number 2 tourist attraction in Omaha is Warren Buffett. People come here to see him. I mean, honestly, it really that. The tourism, they've talked about changing it, but honestly, it's not for everyone. Seems sort of appropriate.
Yeah.
I get that, but let's talk about the Woven Planet canister hydrogen.
Yeah, this is interesting. It came up because there's a podcaster that I watch, and he had a guest on, and they started talking about electric vehicles. Oh, this is interesting. And then he got onto this canister, which is basically the hydrogen version of what Goguru is doing with their little battery canisters that you put in their scooters. And, so you don't have to wait around and charge. You just go up to a dispenser. You take the old battery out, you put it in, you pull a new battery out, fresh one, put it in the vehicle. So Toyota and a company called Woven Planet have been working on developing a similar concept around hydrogen. So you've got to, instead of, I think most of us, we have propane. If you've got a grill, you've got a kind of a rotund, short, stubby propane tank that you plug into your grill, and that fires your grill. So this is kind of along that concept. But the suggestion this guy was making was that, well, this is a great way we can, and even the photographs that Toyota released shows this canister plugged into the side of a car, right? It looked like it was about that big. Well, this canister is at least that big around. So I decided to do some math. So I went to my favorite chat bot and I said, okay, here are the dimensions, and you can look this up I don't know if you want to hit the website where it says the AI Insight part.
Mm-hmm.
If you can show that. So I went in because I said, do the math for me, because I'm not a math guy. I said, do the math for me. Here are the dimensions of that tank that Toyota is touting. Yeah, there it is. So there's like three different aspects of the story that I researched today. Here are the dimensions of the tank. How much hydrogen can this hold at 700 bar or 70 megapascals, or in PSI, pounds per square inch? 700 bar or 70 megapixels is 10,000 PSI. Now think about that. You pump up a tire on a bicycle, what, 40 PSI? On a car, 35 PSI. This is a tank that would supposedly hold hydrogen at 10,000 pounds per square inch. How much hydrogen do you think is stored in this thing? The numbers are there. It's like nothing. I said, well, how far, if I used this in a small commuter car, that's the second story down. If I use this in a small city car powered by hydrogen, how far could I drive on the amount of hydrogen stored in that tank at 10,000 PSI? 14 miles.
I was going to say, I mean, it's 7.8 pounds. That's just a tiny bit less than a gallon.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. No, it's 0.07, isn't it?
Well,
it's like 7%.
The estimated weight of a full canister of hydrogen at 700 bar would be about 7.8 pounds. And that's roughly just a little less than a gallon of gas.
Yeah, but that's
by weight.
That's the reason I asked that question is because the illustration that they're showing is this woman, and there's a video there you can see on the link I provide. There's a woman there it is right there, inserting this into one of these replacement devices, right? So you take the old one, put it in, you take in, and maybe it'll fill it right while you're waiting, or you just simply put that one, replace it, and then you take a fresh one and put it out. That's the idea. So I was just wanting to do the math. How does this work? And I'll tell you, the math is very, very disappointing. I'm not sure, given the realities of what hydrogen is capable of doing, I can't see this being all that practical. I mean, let's say what they're showing you.
Here it says, if you put in that canister, which is, this is confusing, but it says a driving range of 14 miles. I mean, this is like coming to Nebraska on vacation. It's just not that exciting.
No, it's just so I'm not sure, so I did this just is this going to go anywhere in practical terms? And what you're seeing is on the article on the Toyota webpage that's touting this, they're showing it being used, for example, as, with a cooking range, or it's put into, two of these to power an electric motorcycle. And even those applications just seem to not. In fact, I asked it, okay, if I wanted to cook with this, I didn't post that part in here because that's on, I just didn't want to take all the time. But you put this and you use that to replace a propane tank, right? Because that's how most people that, if they don't have electricity or natural gas running into their house, we have farmsteads around here that have big white propane
Right.
tanks alongside.
Mhm.
So if you don't have that, then that's what you use to run your stove to cook with, to make your pancakes in the morning and that type of thing. What how much could that replace? Do you want to use it as a heat source? And my chatbot did the math on it, and they said, no, you don't want to. What you want to do is you want to use the hydrogen in the canister to run a fuel cell, to generate electricity, to run an induction cooktop.
Wow.
rather than using the hydrogen gas, to run a stovetop burner.
Yeah, I was sitting here looking at this like, well, how long could one of these fuel cells power my phone? I mean, never mind powering a car. I mean, damn.
Yeah.
I don't know. So like I was saying, folks, we're not like hydrogen haters. We just can't figure out how it's ever going to work. I mean, it's expensive. Everything so far that's come out with hydrogen. Now, of course, everything with scale in theory gets bigger, but to get big in hydrogen, you have to keep extracting more LNG. And so if it's supposed to replace LNG, it's a problem there too. And it seems, or you have to use so much electricity to convert the hydrogen to energy that it defeats kind of the purpose. And it's, I don't know.
Just use the electricity. No, just use the electricity directly, right? So in this example, you got a wind turbine out there that's running the electricity to store in a battery, and then that electricity you run into your house, and then you run your induction.
Yeah. And I'll admit, folks, I know less about hydrogen than I know about electric, and I don't know a lot about electric. I mean,
well, that's why I asked Pi to do the math for me.
Yeah, and I'm thankful we have engineer Mike Herzog on here on Wednesdays, because sometimes he can explain something in a way that makes sense. And because sometimes we even get people in the comments on the videos that will start talking, and these are other people that are similar to Mike, getting into discussions about, how the transmission lines work and stuff like that, which is right in, Mike's field. But it's interesting kind of see that, because it's like, man, I don't know. All I know is that the farther you transmit electricity, the less,
there is.
Yeah, it breaks down, but I don't know exactly why that is or anything. It seems like sorcery to me. I'm sure that it conflicts with religion, right? But yeah, electricity is if people had come up with electricity in like 1300, they probably would have burned them all at the stake.
Yeah.
For witchcraft, or whatever. But anyways, all right, Bill, that was really all I had for today.
Well, that's plenty. We covered a lot of ground there, but particularly, again, like I said on Tuesdays, hearts and minds go out to the people down in Tampa and in Central Florida, and Georgia, and Tennessee, and West Virginia, and North Carolina, and so on. So we're thinking of you, and actually, what we're doing is what's happening with electric vehicles can help you address some of those very issues, in
ways. I mean, the bidirectional charging, the fact that one of the things we always talk about, people are like, well, where are you going to find an EV charger? It's like, well, how far away is the nearest electric plug? And the problem is people say, well, what if the electric's out from the storm? And it's like, well, then you can't go to a gas station either.
And there is a gasoline shortage all across Florida right now.
Yeah, so and it's not like everybody's running around with jerry cans full of fuel.
Well, and there were people doing that, and they can't find any gas. Sure. Yeah. Before the storm hit.
Right, I get it. Anyways, well, folks, want to say thanks for watching, and we'll be back next week.